Hey there, guys. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about postmodernism and communication. And a couple of thoughts I wanted to kind of lead into first is that there are theories of any kind of field really, that are under the influence and change of worldviews and perspectives. So sometimes it's not exactly about the theory itself, but rather the perspective that influences it. Such as with photography, sometimes it's not always about the subject, but rather the lens that you use to capture that subject. And so this kind of shift in what kind of lens are we using is what we're going to be talking about today, because this shift is happening in today's cultures and worldviews and theories. So today we're going to look at postmodernists and the way that the postmodernist thought and the way it's shaping and changing the way we view communication theory. Now, it's very difficult and it's kind of trying to define the indefinable. So bear with me. It's very complicated and gets really confusing. Alright, so first we're going to be defining postmodernism, if at all possible. Then we're going to discuss the relationship between postmodernism and meaning. And finally, we will conclude with meaning and how we should view communication. And with these three focuses, hopefully this will be able to clarify the way we're supposed to view communication theory through the lens of postmodernism. First, we're going to go ahead and define postmodernism. In her book, Postmodernism and the Social Sciences, Insights, Inroads, and Intrusions, Pauline Marie Roseneau wrote, "Postmodernism questions causality, determinism, egalitarianism, humanism, liberal democracy, necessity, objectivity, rationality, responsibility, and truth." Now, overall, in summary of that quote, postmodernism questions any kind of structure or anything that's set in stone. So if you say this is the one way to do things, it questions that. It tears it apart. Postmodernism, by its core, is a deconstruction of current thought or of current views of a certain subject. So postmodernism is tearing that apart. It questions meanings or the structure of meanings and strips away scientific methods to its very core. So postmodernism rids the individual of the conventionality of experience of others and gives them the essentials to create something new. So basically, we often have these stereotypes in our heads about postmodernism and saying that that they're just going to say there is no sky, like I can claim whatever I want out of something. But really, at its essence, postmodernism is merely the rejection of current views in order so that new views can actually be discovered or created, which is where a lot of the main debate happens, and which kind of brings us to our next point, and that is postmodernism in meaning. Is meaning created or is it discovered? And so postmodernism looks at that. In a book called Postmodernism as the Resurgence of Humanism in Technical Communication Studies by Paul M. Dabrowski, he was quoted saying, "Postmodernism takes many forms and has many meanings. Indeed, postmodernism can be said to be the rejection of the singularity of meaning and the assertion of an indeterminate multiplicity of meanings." So really what it's saying is when things in reality or in theory or in thought are stripped to its essentials, to its very core, then it is in the postmodern view that multiple meanings can be gained or created. So the big question is, though, is the meanings, are those discovered or are they created? Do we just get rid of the old view and make up whatever the heck we want? Or by getting rid of the old view, do new views come to light? And And so that's where a lot of the hardcore debate comes in with postmodernism. Now, in relation to communication theory, which is what we're going to be getting to pretty soon, is looking at meaning. And the meaning is where essentially our biggest debate with communication theory is going to be. So let's go ahead and look at our third point, and that is meaning and communication. If communication is defined as meaning-centered, then postmodernism rejects the notion that there is a singular meaning. So therefore, communication should not just give birth to just one meaning. So if I was discussing something, there shouldn't be just one meaning according to the postmodernist view, but rather a group, like a multiplicity of meanings. So for example, if we're in an art gallery and we see a certain painting, then that painting should be able to yield multiple meanings for different people, because we're all bringing our own little lenses to look and to view it and to see it and say, this is, for me, in my experience, this is what this painting kind of explains to me. Doesn't mean one's right or one's wrong. Now, yes, it's true, we can take that whole perspective and attach it to everything and say there is no sky. We can do that. But that, I feel like that's a little abuse of the postmodernist view. And I believe that most postmodernists that actually think hardcore about these things kind of see it that way. So, excuse me. So in the postmodern lens, meaning is multiple and is created. It is not direct and not set in stone. We bring so many different ideas to it, in that when it comes to communication, someone could tell me, have a great day, but I can come up with so many different ideas. Do they really wish me to have a great day, or are they kind of being sarcastic? And I was just cramping their style by being around them. There's a lot of different meanings that we can bring to those different, to even sometimes to the simplest of things. Now, also, postmodern communication is subjectless. It strips away the traditional way of communication is done in order for new forms of communication to be found or created. So, for example, I mentioned earlier about a camera and photography. And so that with that, postmodernism is about the camera. It's about the lens you use, not about the subject you shoot. So therefore, it doesn't matter whether or not I'm taking a picture of a family, flowers, the sky, trees, leaves. It doesn't matter. What matters is the lens I use and the way I go about it. There are multiple ways to take a picture. You can have higher contrast. You can have bigger exposure. There's multiple ways in going about taking a picture. And that's what postmodernism centers on, is not the subject, not what you took a picture of, but how you took a picture of it. In an article called Modernism, Postmodernism, and Communication Studies, a rereading of an ongoing debate, Dennis K. Mumby wrote, "Thus, the postmodernist and post-structuralist tolerance for multiple meanings is not an attempt to assert a completely relativist theory of meaning that allows us to cling to the idea that reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else." So, in other words, the postmodernist idea with communication is not to just get really relative about things and really abstract and say it's only in your perspective, it's only in your mind, but it's to get you to focus on what kind of lens you're using and the way you communicate, and being open to various different options, because often the postmodernist view is that nothing is completely reliable. Things change. You can't predict everything, and so you have to be open to everything. And that is where the perspective comes from. So in conclusion, we have viewed postmodernism and how it changes meaning and the importance behind meaning, and in relation to communication. So while postmodernism in of itself is really hard to define and kind of vague, I hope this has been able to give you guys some clarity, or at least some form of clarity, and at least the tools for you to come to a conclusion about it. And according to the postmodernist view, there's really no wrong answer, as long as you're thinking about it and considering your options open. Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys with 3 questions to think about. Is meaning or essence created or discovered? I know that Dr. Bailey mentioned this earlier when we were talking about this in lectures, but seriously, it's a very good question because in postmodernism, it does not completely define whether or not it is created or discovered. It almost hints at it being discovered in some places and then created in others. So I feel like it's a very legitimate question to ask. Second, does the deconstructive nature of postmodernism have negative or positive effects over the way we communicate? Because if you look at postmodernism, it's about dissecting, it's about tearing it apart, about tearing apart the way we do things. But can there be some pretty negative effects, or is it all positive? So that's a question I would like you guys to think about. And the last one I would like you to consider is communication theory tangible or indefinable? As postmodernism likes to think of communication as, there's various options. So it's not tangible. It's indefinable, so there's so many open options. And I wanted to know if you guys agreed with that. So is communication theory tangible or indefinable? Thank you guys so much for your time. We're almost done with the semester. You guys got this. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing your answers.